Hi everybody and welcome to this new lesson. Today we're going to talk about John Milton and one of his masterpieces, Paradise Lost. Let's have a quick look at the life and works of this poet. So John Milton may be considered the most representative poet of the Puritan age. He was a man of an immense knowledge. He graduated at Cambridge University, where he had the chance to study Latin, Greek, and Italian culture. In fact, Milton knew the Italian language as well. He traveled much around Europe during his life, especially in Italy, where he had the chance to meet Galileo Galilei. He devoted his entire life to poetry, although in the late 1640s he actively took part in the religious debate of his time, supporting the Puritans. He mainly wrote poems, political pamphlets, and prose. In his works he also defended the freedom of speech and press, the parliament, and the divorce. In fact, he was in favor of people getting divorced. In Milton's opinion, censorship would discourage learning itself, as stated in one of his pamphlets, as it follows. Here is, we can find a quotation from Areopagitica, which is one of his pamphlets, in which he states, "Books are not absolutely dead things, but do preserve as via the purest efficacy an extraction of that living intellect that breathed them. I know they are as lively and as vigorously productive as those fabulous dragons' teeth, and being sown up and down may chance to spring up harmed man." Let's move now to the literary career. We can say that Milton's literary career can be divided into main three periods. So as you can see, we have a first period, which is the early stage of his literary career. Then we have a second period and a third period. In the first period, let's have a look at what includes the first period. The first period includes poetical works written during Charles I's reign. He also wrote L'Allegro and Il Penseroso, which are two lyrical poems in Italian which reflect the spirit of the Renaissance. In fact, Milton was very deeply fond of Renaissance and the spirit of that time. And so, in these two poems, in these two lyrical poems, in a certain way, he shows a sort of nostalgia for this time. In the second period, it includes the prose works and its collection of 23 Petrarchan sonnets about love and other various subjects. For example, in this section, in these sonnets, he wrote some sonnets about how to praise a friend rather than other social and political subjects. These sonnets include also one of the most important and autobiographical poems that he wrote in his life, which is called On His Blindness. On His Blindness is, as I said before, is one of the sonnets in the Petrarchan form, and it's about friendship. In the third period, which is the most important one and the most what it shows more in a certain way maturity for the writing. In fact, in his last period, he produced his greatest work, the epic poem Paradise Lost, which we're going to analyze in a while, which was wrote and published in 1667, followed by Paradise Regained, which was then posthumously published in 1671. And Paradise Regained is a sort of sequel of the first one, of the former one, and it's about the story of Christ's 40 days temptation in the desert. Let's have a look at Paradise Lost, as I said before. Paradise Lost may be considered not only Milton's masterpiece, but one of the best poems ever written in English literature. As I said beforehand, it was published in 67, sorry. It's a religious epic poem about the attempt of rewriting the book of Genesis based on Adam and Eve's disobedience from Satan's perspective. In fact, the rewriting, so this attempt to rewrite the book of Genesis, it's a sort of an attempt by Milton to see the things that were written in the Bible from a different perspective, so from another character, which is Satan's perspective. He follows some of the typical conventions of the epic genre. The fallen angels, in fact, are presented as the warriors of the classical epics, the cosmic setting, and an elevated style. It takes place in a universe in which we can find heaven, hell, and Eden, where the reader meets God, Satan, and all the other fallen angels. It's a poem about disobedience and redemption, basically, seen from 2 points of view. The first one is Adam and Eve's point of view, which consists of their disobedience followed by repentance. And the second one is Satan's point of view, in which we can see his disobedience leading him to further sins such as degradation and punishment. In fact, in this work, disobedience is represented as an insubordination to the universe hierarchy based on proximity of God. As you can see here in this page, we can say that according to Milton, the universe is a sort of hierarchy divided as follows. Here, as you can see, we can find a sort of hierarchical pyramid in which at the very bottom of it, we can find hell with all the devils. Then in the middle, there's the earth, with humans and animals, so this is where men are. And then at the very top side of this pyramid, we can find heaven with Christ and angels. Let's have a further look at how this pyramid works. In this case, Satan refuses this hierarchy, planning to defeat God. So this is basically the main, let's say, the main thread, the main key point of this poem. Through this character, Milton wants to show the determination to be free, to be a rebel. In fact, Satan is presented as a sort of, nowadays, we would define him as an outsider, as an outcast rebel. Basically, the figure of Satan is the most fascinating character in the poem that the reader can encounter. Basically, because he's presented with a new perspective, with a new not only negative things but also positive aspects that are typical of the epic heroes that we find of course, in the epics. In fact, on this purpose, criticism has claimed, has defined Satan as an epic hero because Milton wants to highlight the seductive appeal of evil and the forbidden. Let's have a look at the style. So basically, we can say that the entire work is built and written in archaic vocabulary. There's a huge use of archaic words, and this is basically taken from, of course, the old tradition. In fact, don't forget that. Remember that Milton was deeply fond of Shakespeare as well. So it took from him the structure and way of writing, of course, that were typical of the Shakespeare's time. In fact, in a text that we're going to analyze, we can say we also say some archaic words, and I will highlight them later on. Then moving on, we can say that it has got a very complex use of grammatical structures. For example, subordinate clauses. There are many subordinate clauses that we can see. In fact, it's not ordinary. It's not. It's something that the English language hasn't got today. For example, if we think about today's English, it hasn't got many long sentences, hasn't got many subordinate clauses. So it's rather a short sentence that writing, and so the language is quite short and quite direct and quite quick, because the messages that the people want to convey, that want to send, must be quick and so direct to the speaker. And whereas, as I said, he made a large use of subordinate clauses and so very long, complex periods and grammatically speaking. And furthermore, he also used Latin words in order to create a solemn and poetical language. Then, of course, being a poem, so being poetry, we can't find the use of figurative language such as metaphor, semi, alliteration. There's a large use also of this kind of language that we normally find in poetry as well. Now let's have a look at Saturn speech, which is taken from your book, and specifically it's Saturn speech. So this monologue is taken from Book 1, and it refers to the lines from 242 to 217. So let's do this text analysis together. Before starting analyzing the text, for the space region, so for the problem of not having enough space, I decided to divide the entire monologue in more slides and more pages, so that we can see that in more zoomed, rather than having the entire text in only one page. So basically, this is of course, the starting, so the beginning of this speech. Let's read it together, and then we discuss. Is this the region, this the soil, the clime? Said then the lost archangel, this the seat that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom for that celestial light. So, as you can see, before continuing reading the text, I would like to spend a few words on this. So, I would like to comment on this. Before going to comment this beginning, I want just for you to know that there's a glossary here, so that you can see some words that maybe you might not know. As you can see from these highlighted words in yellow, the region, the soil, the clime. So these words are all referring to, of course, the hell. Consider also this, that Satan, in this passage that we're going to analyze, basically arrives in his new kingdom, so the hell. In fact, in this monologue, exactly, Satan compares the new world to paradise and feels lost because everything is different. And we can also say that Sutton embodies Milton's ideals of independence and freedom, because he has the courage to fight against a tyrannical god. This is what makes of Sutton as an epic hero, as a hero, and also as a very modern character that the criticism has you, recognized its modernity because of his behaviors. Let's go back to the beginning of this text. So, as I said, all these regions and the climb refer to, of course, the hell. So, the hell is described using synonyms, using different words. And as you can see, the lost archangel refers to Satan in this case. And this is the seat that we must change for heaven. Of course, the use of we, so that the subject pronoun we, refers to Satan and other fallen angels. And of course, this mournful gloom, celestial light, of course, they are both referring to for a sad obscurity somehow. So let's continue analyzing the text with the following lines 246 to 255. So basically, in these lines, Milton describes Satan's acceptance of hell. Let's read it together. Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid who shall be bride, furthest from him his best, whom reason hath equalled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors, hail, infernal woe, and thou, profanest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is in its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. So basically, as you can see here, first of all, in this case, furthest from him is best. Grammatically speaking, first of all, furthest, of course, is a superlative form. But furthest from him is best. Milton uses these lines, this sentence, just to emphasize and to highlight the separation, the complete separation from God. And all these lines that follow, of course, describes the moment in which Satan accepts the new reality, the new setting, the new seat, as Milton describes and beforehand. And I just want you to notice, when we talked about archaic vocabulary, this is what I meant by archaic vocabulary. Not only this, but these are just a practical example. For example, in this case, the use of the suffix th in a form of the archaic form of hath, which is the modern, the old form of has, the third singular person of the verb to have in modern English, as well as thou or thy. So these are basically all references to Shakespeare's age, so to the Renaissance period, from which, let's say, Milton doesn't want to get rid of. Thy new possessor, receive thy new possessor. This line means the moment, so underlines the fact that from this moment onwards, Satan has become the leader of hell. So the leader of this new part of this hierarchy described by Milton. And then continues from lines 256 to 263.
here Milton says, what matter where, if I be still the same, and what I should be, but less than he whom thunder hath made greater. He at least we shall be free. The Almighty hath not built here for these, have we? Will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. So this is another important part of Sartre's speech. First of all, of course, there's a repetition of hath, so there's a repetition of archaic words that Milton uses. In this case, the yellow underlined sentence means that here, at least, finally, Satan and all the fallen angels can be free. So can be free of course, any restriction, any conventions that they had to follow. They were it was compulsory for them to behave in a certain way, and so being a leader in this new realm, in this new situation, in this new place, allows of course Satan to behave as freely as he wants to. The Almighty, there's another archaic form of there's another archaic form of the, so there's an abbreviation which technically it's called clipping. And then let's have a look at the very last two lines. To reign is worth ambition, though in hell, and better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Well, these two lines underlines and emphasize, of course, Satan's pride. Satan becomes proud of being there, of being the leader of the new, to be in charge, of being in charge of this new place called, of course, hell. And then the last lines of his speech continues, but wherefore let we then our faithful friends, the associates and corporateness of our loss, lie thus astonished of the oblivious poor, and call them not to share with us their part in this unhappy mansion, or once more with rallied arms to try what may be yet regained in heaven, or what more lost in hell. So this is how the speech ends. The yellow words just emphasize and repeat the use of a varied vocabulary referring to the setting. So as we have already said, as we've just said, the setting here, of course, is hell, but hell is presented in throughout different words. So raging, soil, crime, mournful gloom, oblivious poor, unhappy mansion. So they are all it's a vocabulary referring. They are all words referring to hell. So they describe hell in a certain way. Now, we've just finished analyzing Saturn's speech, and now it's your turn, because I just gave this. I just given this this section of the lesson the name of Students' Corner, so that you can follow the lead out activities next page that I want you to focus and do for homework. So there are basically two tasks on which you have to focus on. Task 1 is writing, and it's about essay writing. So as you can see here, I just written the reference with of the level. So it's a B2 first certificate level. So it means that you have to write at least 150 words. Let's have a look at the task. Choose one of the following tasks and write an essay. So basically here you have in task 1 two topics, let's say two tasks to choose from. The first says, imagine you were forced to decide whether to live in a place where people live happily but have no freedom, or in a place where people suffer but are free. Where and why would you live? So this is the first. In the second set, in today's society, many people are extremely fascinated by the forbidden. Discuss this statement, explaining whether you share this idea or not, and why. Task 2, it's about a web quest. A web quest, I don't know if you know that, but it's a sort of specific research that you do, of course, in the internet. It's always at the same level, and it's always it's compulsory for you to write minimum 150 words. Make a research about Paradise Lost and its legacy. So here we are focusing on Paradise Lost and its legacy. As you know, in nowadays society, classics or novels or fiction or drama have been as an inspiration for many authors, contemporary authors, for filmmakers, for for drama performers. So this is why we talk about legacy today. So using the follow suggested guiding topics, you have to do a research about how Paradise Lost have been as inspired throughout time the different contexts that we know today. So first of all, focus on this. The first point, it says, Milton's influence today. Sutton has an inspiration for TV series, contemporary fiction and horror movies. So as you might know, of course, today we've got loads of horror movies that we can, of course, easily find, where you can easily find Satanism or the devil as a character, or contemporary fiction. For example, if you think about the new way of writing, for example, vampires. So all these things that they in a certain way linked to the evil, Satan as a figure. So as well as TV series. For example, if you think about today, if you go to Netflix, you can find a TV series called Lucifer. Lucifer is one of the last, let's say, one of the last one, among the last ones, and it's about Satan, as well as, of course, Milton does with presenting, of course, Satan in from a new perspective in Paradise Lost, and as well as the cult of Satan in history. These are all intertwined because, of course, it starts from the origins, it starts from history, and then, of course, it goes through different contexts, and so authors are basically quite inspired and quite influenced by what a classic or what a novel has been, or as in a certain way meant for literature throughout time. So I want you to just research about these and find out what kind of TV series have been released, or if there are any, if we've got any contemporary fiction that we can look at, and where you can find, for example, inspirational characters related to, of course, Satan as a figure today, or as well as horror movies, because horror movies, I think is the horror movies are the best representation of the devil, and also evil in a certain way. So focus on these two guiding topics, and I want you to just note down, and I want you to write down a research about this. Okay, thank you for this lesson together, and see you next in